Picked up Aaron Mazzoni, who's here somewhere. I think back putting out some cookies maybe. And also Ainsley Gullum, who's over here on my left. Ainsley has also done the artwork for this issue, and the model for the artwork is back here on the tables. Anybody that didn't get a copy of the issue, if you'd like to read along with us, hey Micah, hand me a copy right here. I'll pass on this gentleman. It was such a unique experience when we did it last time. We decided, well, it's only 40 pages, let's try to read through the whole thing. And it was like a church service without, without, I don't know, boring stuff. I didn't say that. But it was really cool to watch everybody reading along as we did it. Tonight, we're going to have some of our contributors read a couple of their own works from outside the issue first, introduce them to you, and then we'll jump into the issue. We might skip over a couple of things just for time's sake, but let's leap right into some introductions here tonight. In the summer issue, I think there might be one or two more copies left back there. You've seen the yellow one with the purple owl. If they were for sale, I'd have to say they're pretty much almost all sold out. I think there's only maybe 4 or 5 more in the building anywhere. So that's good to see. Hopefully we'll do as well with this one. One of the people who's going to be reading tonight is Bauman, who was published in the last issue, and he's going to come up and start us off tonight reading a piece of his from the one from the summer issue, right? Okay, and then we'll move on to some readings with John Devers, who's in this issue, as well as he was in the last issue. And then we'll introduce Margie, and I'll go on down the line, and then we'll get into the issue tonight. But thank you all for coming, and let's get started and listen to some poetry. Come on up, Rick.
This poem is called My House. My house is slowly leaving me. Piece by piece, it departs. Soon I'll have nowhere to live, to sleep. My house is slowly leaving me. The wall left, it desired some time alone. The ceiling left, it reached an all-time low. The floor left, it couldn't handle the pressure anymore. The door left, in search of greater opportunities. The roof left, it didn't like the stormy weather. The window left, it yearned to see the world. The stairs, they come and go, can never make up their mind. My house is slowly leaving me. Soon I will leave too. Not yet though, I'll simply stay here for now. Just me in the closet, hanging around.
Thank you, Mike. All right, now, John Devers, whose name I pronounced incorrectly last time. I won't say John Devers this time, I promise. Was also in the last issue, and he's got a poem in this issue, but we offered him to read a couple of selections of his own work to introduce him to you tonight as well. So, John?
So I actually only brought one piece with me today, and hello everyone, good evening. But first of all, I wanted to give a little promotion, not necessarily for myself, but for my girlfriend back there, Danielle. She started a small crafting business on Etsy. It's called Dirigible Plums. If anyone's a Harry Potter fan, you might catch that deep cut reference. And she does embroidery. She embroidered my shirt. That's for the dinosaur. Don't be afraid. It's not gonna get it. She does she can make clothes. She's made capes that you can buy. She does embroidery cloth, and she'll do custom embroidery designs. And this is one in particular I wanted to share. I just read Kurt Vonnegut's Mother Night, and that opening line, like one of the opening lines in like the first paragraph of like the editor's note is, "We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be." And I told her about it because she loves one-liners, and she had the idea to embroider it, and I just gave like a couple ideas for the design. So she did this. She can do plenty of other things too. If you're interested in that, she has business cards that if you would like to take any after the show or whatever. So you can raise your hand, that way people know where to. And then I have one piece. I did this back in college, and it's about the phenomenon where we try to attribute faces to where faces aren't there, and it's a phenomenon called pareidolia. And I did a poem about that, so I'll read it now. I found Jesus Christ charred into my toast. He'd make me a solid sum from some fanatic online, but if only I had the Virgin Mary muffin to compliment it. I could feel it. I feel his sunken wheat eyes clasp my hungry aura. I gave him a crown of butter shrouded in passion fruit jelly. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. By the way, I was just checking with Jerry here. Jerry has a couple things he's going to put on the table. You can see Danielle over here if you want some embroidery work, but a couple of our writers here, Jerry Wemple is going to be reading with us tonight. He's got some items that he'll have back here on the table. The ones that are free are the ones, with the dead deer skull, right? Okay, the other ones are not. There's Jerry's work back here, but also Marjorie Maddox will be reading with us tonight, and she's got some of her books in the back, some essays, short story collection, and also some poetry back there. So I'll let them tell you about that when they come up, and you see them to purchase any of those things if you'd like to tonight. Okay, and speaking of Marjorie, I'd like to introduce you to her next. Marjorie Maddox is professor at Lock Haven University, and so she's come all the way here tonight to read for us from the issue, but also she's going to read a few items for us as well.
So I've had a fun year. I've actually had a couple of new things come out this year, and that's what I brought tonight. So I wanted to read a little bit from those. The first book is called True, False, None of the Above, and it's a book about writing and teaching. So I wanted to read one poem from here. I often teach Gerard Manley Hopkins' God's Grandeur in my Intro to Lit book. And I always talk with my students about connecting literature to their everyday lives. And I really see this poem, even though it's written in the 19th century, as an environmentalist poem. So we also talk about controversial issues of fracking in the oil industry. And the topic for today is environmentalism, teaching God's grandeur. More politically correct than divine grandeur, it too flames out in this small Pennsylvania town where fracking hijacks the headlines. Good reason, and good enough to bring the state students trotting heavily into a poem piled high with God and earth, with responsibilities they hear each morning as the gas industry trucks rattle past our windows. Their tired drivers knowing nothing of iambic pentameter or sestet, but much about food on the table, a steady job. The freshmen, eager now, blurt out dilemma, paradox, in stress, and all those other new-sounding ideas suddenly connected to their lives, their parents, the sonnet they think was written last week, even with its 19th century sound-packed syllables they don't get until slowing down, thinking. And so, after playing with light, foil, sound, the way trade sears, blears, and smears, and how and why shoes separate us from ground, we detour to Genesis Cat Stevens, and a heavy metal rendition that almost drowns out Hopkins with bass. All this before rounding the terrain rake bend to solution, which is what they are surprised to discover we almost want. The eloquent octet, the bright wings, the ah that opens the mind to talk, at long last, about the holy. And then I'm really excited. In March, I have my first short story. It's kind of short story slash creative nonfiction collection coming out. So some of these pieces are quite old, but I wanted to read one for you called Pennsylvania Round in 4 parts. And it's written in 4 parts, of course. 1. Before Pennsylvania, the world was flat. The distance between 2 horizons, a straight view. In those other states, I walked a state of mind, linear but unlivable. Map coordinates located something less than inhale, exhale. Now place has something to do with oxygen hoarded in the limbs of hemlock and elm, with the way these mountains bulge with breath. Air blooms among such unbashful blues and greens, darts with the dragonfly, and drinks with the white-tailed deer. Always it winds with the creeks, then glides over Allegheny curves to rise up with the hawks. When the firefly blinks, it is not an SOS, but a refrain from a mountain song so old you can hear the hills humming. 2. The only light in the shotgun house is the steady blink of the TV. I've swept her job at the mill beneath the corners of a 40-year-old carpet, crammed his factory work in the closet they no longer open. But for years I couldn't ignore the hum of what they didn't have, the absence they gave my husband in abundance. I can almost touch each wall with its peeling paper of orange watering cans as I hike between sheet-covered furniture lined up for the one clear view of a sitcom. Though I try to get comfortable, I can't. Even the air bunches up against itself between straight planes of plaster. Outside the narrow windows, bricks block the coal-tinged breeze. Rusting lawn chairs clutter the neighbors' crumbling porches from which out-of-work middle-aged men stare at each other and do nothing. Teens compete at squealing their makeshift hot rods down the thin strip of asphalt left over between tightly parked pickups and hand-me-down 4-doors. From the cracked sidewalk, barefoot girls in midriffs pause their hopscotch and wave. I head instead to their backyard, where blooms border a 6x4 yard and spill over as geraniums and pansies, roses and black-eyed Susans, tulips and marigolds. Hummingbirds nip nectar. Tomatoes bob from stalks tied up with old pantyhose. Lettuce proclaims victory over rabbits, and strawberries congratulate themselves for against the odds growth. My brown thumb, envious to the end, fingers joy. 3. The doe and its fawn enter our backyard on the slant, kitty-courting themselves from the rhododendron bush to magnolia. Theirs is a quiet joy, stepping just so from their hills into suburbia, the distant 6 hops of a skipped stone. They've forgotten to worry and remember this grass and the long limbs of our maple. They step easily between swing set and tool shed, detour around a half-finished game of croquet. From behind glass, my children stare. They compare the soft sheen of the deer's fur to sketched likenesses and store-bought books. My husband warns them not to open the door, not to let the conditioned air out. 4. Beneath the tent flaps, my children and I breathe in the wild Pennsylvania air. The mountains, we say, are hugging the wind, the laurel so thick we could pick 1,000 blooms. All evening we count the blinks of fireflies. We sense hawks circling the night clouds above our camp and bears obediently pausing between the zigzags of evergreens. We listen long into the dark until the drone of crickets leads us into dreams full of deer and ruffled grouse. Then we doze without worry, the curve of the world huddled about us as we breathe its crispness in. In the chilled morning air, when we emerge from sleep and the tent door, it is, almost surprisingly, just our backyard on the outside, our hammock waiting in the half light of dawn. We think we hear the doe and her fawn, but it is my husband up on the patio, already flipping blueberry pancakes on the griddle. The country-style bacon sizzles with joy when we join him, humming our campfire rounds. And I think I'll end there for the sake of time. Thank you.
I'm hearing some occasional reverb here, which we heard none of course, when we were setting up and testing. That might be better. Okay. Thank you. And we'll hear more from Marjorie when we get into the issue tonight. Now, Harold Jenkins wasn't in the last issue. However, it was delightful to see his Facebook post after our party last time, because he said, hey, on sort of a whim, I went to the release party for Word Fountain's summer issue, and I ended up reading the longest piece for the group. So since Harold has a piece in here tonight, I'm going to introduce to you Harold Jenkins, who does a lot of work for promoting the arts and blogging communities here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and he's been a great friend to us here at Word Fountain, and so I'd like to turn the mic over to him next. I've heard somewhere that people read better if they clap first.
Thanks so much, Dave. It's so great to be here. Thank you, everybody. The story I'm going to read is a true story. It is set in the parking lot of Garrity's in Hanover Township near Nanticoke. It took place a night in April 2013. It was a Friday night, the night that the Boston Marathon bomber was caught hiding in a boat. I don't remember the exact date. It was a rainy night, though. This is a true story. Some parts of it have been slightly fictionalized. I leave it to you to determine what those are. This is called One Friday Evening in a Parking Lot. As I pulled into the supermarket parking lot, a bedraggled orange cat dashed through my headlight beams. It looked wet. It had been pouring just an hour before, and the asphalt glistened in the darkness. I parked my car and headed for the entrance. Ice cream, I thought. Belgian waffle mix. Hey, could you get me something while you're in there? A voice said. I stopped, looked around. There was no one else in the lot. Nothing but some cars and the wet cat, now sheltering in a cart corral. I'm hungry, came the voice again. Could you get me a can of something? The cat was staring at me. I hadn't had much to drink that night. 2 beers, part of a third, not enough to get me drunk. I turned to continue into the store. Something nice, the voice said, fainter now. Not that store-brand crap. I was a little unnerved as I grabbed a cart. I didn't need a full-sized cart, but I didn't feel like carrying around containers of ice cream in my hands. I got 2 cartons of Rocky Road, still on sale, the 1.5 quart size. I began to search the aisle with pancake syrup, buying the syrup and the waffle mix might be nearby. I stopped at the pet food aisle. That cat did look hungry. Maybe it would still be outside. I found a can of the stuff my cats like. Just 1 can. If the cat was still out there, I'd give it to him. If not, my cats would eat it. A few minutes later, I headed to the checkout. 2 containers of Rocky Road ice cream, 1 box of Belgian waffle mix, One can of cat food, nearly 10 o'clock on a Friday night. I wonder what the high school girl behind the register thought. As I walked to my car, I looked over at the park corral. The orange cat was still there, staring at me. "Did you get it?" the voice asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out the can of cat food. I began to open it as I walked past my car towards the cat. "Just leave it and go," the voice said. The cat backed away as I approached. I pulled the lid off the can, set can and lid on the pavement, and took a few steps back. The cat scrambled over to the can and took a few tentative nibbles, then began to gobble away. "Oh, damn, this is good," I heard, muffled. The cat stopped and looked up at me. "Well, what do you want? Go away, I'm eating." I kept watching. The cat arched its back slightly. "Seriously, go away. I'll hurt you if you stay." I took another step back. The cat continued to stare at me, then began eating again more warily. We were done here. I headed back to my car. I wanted to go home, maybe have some ice cream. "Hey," came a voice as I got back into my car. "Thanks. Thank you for the food." I tossed my bag on the passenger seat, started the car, and pulled out of the lot. As I drove away, I looked at the cart corral one last time. I could see the cat still there, eating. I went home and had some ice cream.
I'm not sure if I can tell which parts were fiction. Well done. Thank you, Eric. Jerry Wemple is here tonight, and I'm going to call him back up here in a few minutes to start off reading from the issues, so let's bring him up now. First, Jerry is a professor at Bloomsburg University, so another person that's driven quite a way, and he wrote the poem that starts off our issue tonight, but he's got a couple of other things to share with us first.
Thanks to David for organizing everything, including the issue and tonight. I'm going to read a few new poems, stuff I've been working on the last year or two. So, this poem is called Bridge, and it starts off with a little quote from a Richard Hugo poem. You guys might know that poem, Degrees of Gray, of Phillipsburg. So, "Someday soon," he says, "I'll go to sleep and not wake up." You tell him no. Tuesday night, and I'm driving over the river bridge that connects the old highway to the village. The bridge is long and low and lighted. Rainwater drips from the rounded steel side railings. No other traffic is on the bridge, and I think how easy it would be to pull to the side, slip from the car, slide into the darkness below. It's been raining for days. The water is fast and cold. It would only be a moment. Tonight, firefighters and volunteers search for a 70-something woman who disappeared in another village 10 miles downriver. In 2 days, they'll find her washed up a bit farther down, jammed against a log on the north end of Packers Island. Had she missed the island, gone another mile or so, she'd have spilled over the dam at the south end of Sunbury, turned and churned in the water until morning, when some passing trucker on a nearby bridge phoned it in to the county dispatch. The woman's husband knows she always gets sad come the short days, the long nights, that he needs to be on guard when she says she's going for a walk. He knows, despite the saying, that there are some things time does not erase. Cold rain can seep deep into the hollow. I'm no expert, but I remember from my Navy days, a few minutes in the water this time of year, and the limbs go numb. Breathing is labored, the heart is taxed, and then shuts down. That's why it's rare. Damn near no one walks back out of the river once they go in. Tonight, I finish my trek across the bridge, turn right on the side street, pull into the lot of the neighborhood grocery. Inside, I say hello to the store clerk, then search the bright, ordered aisles for the things that I need. I'm always looking and I like to drive around little back roads ever since I was a kid. And I think about things that disappear from the countryside. And I remember when I was a kid, and my mother would drag me to these like little country beauty shops. Like the woman would have something in her garage fixed up, and she always called them beauty operators. So that's what this poem's called, Beauty Operators. The beauty operators live out on the county roads that connect small town to village. They're shops fashioned out of a converted garage, renovated breezeway, or a side room with a separate entrance added off the kitchen. The husbands are usually farmers or night shift workers who grumble because they are farmers and have to work the night shift because soybean prices have gone to hell and corn won't be nothing this year because hard rains so late in the spring delayed the planting till well past its time. Beauty operators are mostly a one-generation thing. Women who like to do hair and talk and know that in between customers they can go over to the kitchen, make some coffee, sit down with the news on the radio. Their daughters have no interest in the shop and get pregnant early, just out of school or not quite. The father farmers grumble when they have to give up the better part of a level acre for the girl and her fiancé to put the trailer on. The farmer has to call in a favor to get the septic field dug on short notice and a discount, and then another favor to get the kid on down at the warehouse instead of part-time at the convenience store, because he knows that won't be enough for two know-nothing kids and a baby. And it shames him a bit to know that all the neighbors and the guys at work know all about the pregnant daughter and the boy and the trailer. But the beauty operators know this ain't nothing new. That these days, even the old women who go to the Ridge Evangelical Lutheran Church will talk sotto voce about a granddaughter or a great niece who's had the most beautiful baby. And sometimes there's a mention of the father, and sometimes not. Sometimes when the beauty operators drink their coffee and look out the window to see their daughters in the hand-me-down Dodge driving off to the doctor or the market, they are reminded of an older sister or a favorite cousin who years ago got in trouble with the boy and left town, sometimes never coming back. The beauty operators watch as their daughters turn the car from the long, dusty dirt driveway to the blacktop road. Watch as they crest the little hill, then vanish from sight. And I'll read one more now. This is called Nickel Rides, and it's dedicated to Freddie Gray, who was the young man who was in the back of the police vehicle and ended up dead in Baltimore. Nickel Rides. 1. Back in the days when your grandfather's father, or maybe his father, was a young man down at the shore amusement piers or the scruffy city lots over near the wrong side of town, they used to call them nickel rides. Steel boxes jacking up and down, bucking around, making you feel like you was worked over with a crowbar, like your hips were smacked with a plank. Back in my day, word was out about those nickel rides on the Philly streets. I was in from the country, hard down by the river and woods, but even I knew what was what. Saw clear enough that one day while stretching my legs near the 30th Street station, waiting in between long-run trains, when the paddy wagon pulled up and 4 cops jumped out and jumped a man I hardly noticed, whacking him good with long sticks. I figured out soon enough that I needed to take a left, cross the street, head up another, act like I never saw nothing, especially a side vision glance of him being cuffed and dumped into the back of the wagon for a nickel ride. That unit screeched lurching down the street like the driver wanted to bust the brakes and run out all the gas all at once. 2. First off, the war on drugs is a concept. There ain't a war on drugs. There's a war on people. All wars have casualties, atrocities. All wars have losers. Only some wars have winners. Tonight I see charmed city up in flames, orange tongues of fire taunt us from brick buildings. The old people say it's just like it was back in the King riot nearly 50 years ago. They say the neighborhood ain't changed much since those days. We had one good store, now it's burnt. Kids too young to remember Tupac, let alone the Reverend King, dodge in and out of focus like they were spun off their own nickel rides, days from the experience. Philly, Baltimore, D.C., I'm not much for cities, but a twist of fate, a change of luck, and I could have been. Missed being born in Baltimore, city of my conception, by a few weeks or a month. I got a parcel of kin buried in the German Saint Cemetery in the Manioc section of Philly. Generation or two before them, it isn't hard to fathom other blood kin, all those years removed, being sold in an auction lot in swampy D.C. Of course, there's a war on despair, too, though not official and having no spokesperson. It's often erratic, explosive even, but it's long going like the rest. Likewise, too, despair is a concept, and so needs a people enemy, and sometimes it's them, but in the end, it's us. Me, I avoid the nickel rides. I watch on my TV what's happening 150 miles downriver in slack jaw and sorrow.
Thank you, Jerry. I also want to point out, I don't know if I mentioned when I was talking about Jerry and Marjorie having some books back here, I think Ainsley also has a couple of her works of art back here. She's the one who did our artwork on the cover. If there's anything that you'd like to make your own, this is the young lady to talk to over here about that. Also, my friend Erin Delaney offered to read a couple of poems tonight because there are plenty of people in this issue who are not here, and so we wanted enough voices to try to read as much of it as we could. And so I asked Erin if she'd read a few things before we get into the winter issue as well. And Erin, did you bring along any copies of the, okay.
I only have 3
Okay.
So,
This is an anthology of Northeast Pennsylvania writers that just came out from Nightshade Press, Keystone College.
Nightshade Press came out with Down the Gospel, 11 books from northeastern Pennsylvania, edited by Bauman and Ryan Fennell.
Okay, so if you'd like to, and Brian was in our last issue as well. So I'm going to ask Erin to come on up, and if you would like to look at those books, that's a lady to talk to about those as well.
I would be on one of the tables, I just didn't know where.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Sorry.
That's all right.
And I'll leave them right there.
That'll work. Thanks, Erin.
Hi, and I'm going to read a couple of my own from the anthology. I'll probably just read 2. The way that the anthology is laid out, it's all different kinds of poems obviously about the northeastern Pennsylvania. A lot of the things that I have a tendency to write are either from my own childhood or things that I've observed, and it just so happens that this one is one of my favorites, and I noticed all of the coal breakers on the walls, so it kind of seems very fitting that the first poem that I would read would be about a coal breaker. And so this poem is actually about the Ashley coal breaker, which was torn down not too long ago, but I don't know, it has a place in my heart. I feel like there's something magical about that area, just to be able to see an actual entire coal breaker that was still there. It was amazing to sneak into and take a look at. Not that I was ever there. I didn't do that. I heard other people. Anyways, this is my first poem. It's called Reflections on the Remains of the Ashley Coal Breaker. From this black rock seeps the diamonds of our past. This ever-burning stone, a historic smoke and mirror act of prosperity. And when the ash was cleared, it revealed an end to the ancestry of our region, a vein into our lifeblood. Abandoned coal crushers and factories, those crumbled remains of midday business, thick, broken windows revealing empty executive desks with loose-leaf expenditures, dated a century ago, smashed between the rubble, and in the distance, the mine is always open. Its metal cart tracks disappear into cavernous dark depths, closing around a crouched path, This crawl space where great-grandfathers tapped away 12 hours, pickaxe to craggy, lamp-lit walls, until the whistle of shift's end gave way to immigrants' pay and dusty night coughs in concrete cities. It is a centuries past that still consumes. We, above the earthless spaces, future generations of breaker boys, releasing our broken spirits of ancestry, mining our worlds to discover new diamonds. I'm not sure which direction I want to go in because I have a couple. I really like this poem, but it's really dark, so I hope you don't mind going in that direction. This poem, I live in Nanticoke, and there's a lot of things in Nanticoke, lots of bars, there's schools, churches, and cemeteries. And I have been obsessed with Ralph Waldo Emerson for years, and part of my studies in undergraduate was about him. So in looking and walking around town and just being exposed to just so many cemeteries, it kind of gave me this inspiration to write this poem about both, about that and about Ralph Waldo Emerson. So this is a poem about him and his experience with his first wife. It's called Mortality and the Uncut Rock, for Ralph Waldo Emerson. Below this uncut rock, the mortal leaves brown and crinkling beneath this sleepy hollow. This dirt is sacred. The earth moves and wriggles. Life within stirs with anticipation. RW's fingernails clawed this hollow ground, exhuming layers of rock and soil, revealing gritty emotions beneath its cool, dark spaces. Face to face with her decay, life and death in its most raw form, she remained a message to him, a symbol of raw simplicity and inspiration. His heartstrings mended, communing with his oversoul as manicured grass stretching upwards to the stars. Thank you. And over there.
All right, so we've talked about there's some books available here, some books available back there, and we'll try to end things quickly enough so that if you'd like to purchase anything from anybody, that you'll have time to do that. Also some art over here and some embroidery. Oh my God, I know that's a sin I just committed. Okay. And if you're not sure about, one of those things, just ask someone. So this is the winter issue. Everybody get a copy of it? We have them right back here next to the model that Ainsley used when she did the cover. This has been a learning experience, and every time I learn something new, I learned this time that you really got to talk to. I think there were probably 6 different poets that I had to talk to personally and say, okay, is this how you want the punctuation, or the lack thereof, or do you want punctuation here? I also learned that polka can be capitalized because polka can be a sacrament in a Catholic church. That's awesome. That was something new that I learned. So I hope you enjoy this. We're going to skip over a couple of things just for time, and not everyone is here. Steve Flannery wasn't able to be here with us tonight. He is an employee here of the Luzerne County Library System and actually makes deliveries between all of our libraries. I manage the Plains branch, and all our employees up there, that's me. So I get to see Steve every day, and Steve submitted a poem, and I'll read that one in his absence. But there will be a couple that we're going to skip over. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody that was going to read yet tonight. Did I? Did I skip anybody? Okay, I crossed everybody off, so I guess I didn't. So as we start into this, I was struck when we were getting all of these submissions by a certain theme. I guess maybe people, because we were thinking it was winter, there was a certain darkness, but there were a lot of driving poems in here as well, and we tried to bring in some bits of light and some other touches of history and literature, and I was just overwhelmed by how well it flowed together. So we're going to try to keep most of the continuity. I'm going to ask, you've already met Jerry Wemple just a few moments ago, and you met Aaron Delaney just now. So I'm going to ask those two, followed by my son Micah, if y'all remember the ones I asked you to read. Jerry's poem starts off, takes us into this journey into the night, and then he's going to read the next poem, Night Ride. Aaron Delaney's going to read the Men in White Bands and Storm Clouds over Fairmont, and then Micah will read On the Docks of Eagle Harbor, and then I'll be back up to continue from there. Okay, I'll turn the podium over once again to Jerry Wemple for our winter issue, 2017. Let's clap again.
This poem is part of a series. It's called Ark Drives Through the Night, and it's about this character Ark, who the book I have back there is called the Artemis Poems, and Ark is like a follow-on to a series of narrative poems, and this is like a follow-on to that book. Ark drives into the night. Big rig coming up fast. Its lights go from far to closer to close. Barely keeping it between the white lines, Ark welcomes distraction. 100 miles, maybe less, but 100 is a good number, and when more turns out to be less, then less is better. A boost. State line sign, then gone. The big rig that was riding his donkey faded off on the hill climb. Lights in the distance, York, then Camp Hill. Might go east shore all the way in daylight, but too many hills and curves and woods and deer for nighttime. Instead, Ark takes the low river road with nothing much for 60 miles, but porn shops, cheap motels, and truck stops. 60 miles, 59, 58. The radio has country, preacher preaching, preaching, country, pop, pop, preaching, pop, country. The moon mirrors on the river, the water low and flat as the road. 37, 34, a few more miles of darkness. And then the next poem is Night Ride in New York City by Steve Huffetard. I was 7 or 8, riding at night in someone's car over a bridge strung with lights, the Whitestone or Frog's Neck, and we seemed to be standing still as the bridge slid past pillar after pillar until my eyes blurred. My identity seemed to slip away, and I repeated my name to myself, silently, over and over, until those words meant nothing. Night loomed above, and lights on the river sparkled, everything moving but me, who was no one, just a flicker on a dark river rushing toward a hole where the world used to be.
This poem is called The Men in the White Bands by C. L. Bledsoe. I said that right. They wake earlier than some go to bed, the men with hard hands, and every one of them smiles when he sees my toddler daughter flounce by. Breakfast is quick and on the way because there's no food in the house, or maybe no peace, and sugar is cheap. I see them when I leave in the smoky dark, lining the parking lot, an obstacle course of battered whaling ships covered with ladders, poles that resemble harpoons, tools. I don't know what they do, but it's probably anything. They ease onto the rutted road ahead of me, stop at 7-Eleven. A man steps out, grinning back to those still inside at a joke only they can do. And the next poem is called Storm Clouds Over Fairmont by Ace Bajas. Is that correct? I'm in town to read poems about my troubles. Does it bother you to talk about it? Someone asks. No, I say. If I can't feel at home in my history, I'm a man with two faces staring at the sun. Not this sun, which hides behind slow, rolling cumulonimbus, while I stand outside the hotel's double doors to smoke, adding my ashes to the graying. It'll rain soon, fanged pellets carving mist. There are no illusions here. The world is what world I have. I gather it around me like a fireproof blanket, then walk among the flames I've set alight.
This poem is called On Docks off Eagle Harbor by Raymond B. Beck. In the east, the moon rises, a contained ball of flame. Winds surf the anxious waves, and around the lonely docks, unfamiliar stars tip their toes in the vast lake of night. Stale clouds coat the lighthouse, blinking its tired pulse. The moon arches even higher on the ladder with each minute. The north leaks a faint light, an unsettling of ghosts long past. Isle Royale is a shadow, trees unshaven in the swath. Sprinkles of water thunder across the stiffened benches, shedding its residue. The moon sails clean white on high.
One thing I've also learned is I think in the future, the more and more contributors we have, I need to ask them to send a pronunciation guide after acceptance. We're struggling with some names. I'm going to skip ahead to page 7. Charlene Gilman wasn't able to be here tonight, but I've heard her read this poem at the Bloomsburg Public Library recently, and I really like this one, so I'm going to share this one with you tonight. Bus ride, Little Americas, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Texas, Arizona, California. TV Guns and Pawn is a square bunker building in Rawlins, boasting big black letters, "Your mom was pro-life, thank her." Rolls on, sign, and another. Rolls one, sign, and another. Wyoming West uncurls east and back as the midnight big dog greyhound stretches and runs. Past Beans, Feed, and Butchery, the Viva Mart, the come-and-go convenience store, the Lady Saver coin-op laundry. Dawn lights the silo painted like a Coors can in the stubble, flying past the nodding grizzled man whose wallet chain holds single dollars close while he sleeps. Mother gives sips of Pepsi breakfast to her child. No one reads on this bus. Sunlight comes flashing silver like running water. Sunset sets and silver lights come up. The Cherokee Strip in OK, Oklahoma flickers like film. Tick, tick, ticks on a picket fence. Flipping playing cards pinned on a kid's spokes. Plastic-covered signs on parade or bare bulbs swing in dark holes when signs are busted. Gape, ghosts, out of business, out of town, out of luck. Floodlights on Pleasant Valley State Prison. Pale brown dirt into Pecos, Texas. Sunrise crossing over Woman Hollering Creek. Diamond Horse Cafe. The dry Pecos sending prayers upriver for the peeling latter rain church. Prayers are like miles run straight through. He who stops, the driver, keeps his own reasons when and why. Off the clock he pulls over. A woman from the clay dirt red shoulder climbs on with a blue suitcase, tells the operator, "You've been sent because the Lord entered my life." Wedges a suitcase between sneaker feet, untangles long dark hair, unfolds a 20 found from the side of the road. Another miracle, proof that God will pay her fare. Terry from Key West talks all the way to L.A., Never been to jail and never got married, he says, proud. Because his father took him to the orphanage on Sundays, taught him to be free. Daddy pointed through the chain link, fatherless boys, cut grass, a line of push mowers, a row of boys, identical t-shirts, identical crew cuts, crew cutting the grass, marching and mowing military style. Daddy said all that separated me from them was this fence if I didn't watch my step. He remembers their white shirts, blue jeans, red mowers, 40 years ago, a ragged line of boys and machines, the field green, the sky blue, like today, on this bus, all of us, into the horizon, in a ragged march, the past moving the future.